Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel and welcome to 2024. I'm Amarachi Ubani. 2023 was a busy year on the foreign scene. The war in Ukraine entered its first year, running into its second, and then we began our focus on the war between Israel and Hamas. Just to name a few events, here in Nigeria, a new administration began a new phase of shuttle diplomacy in that President Bola Tinubu tried his hardest to convince international investors of the need to invest in Nigeria, promising great return on investments and removal of the bottlenecks in investment. My colleague Layo Olarinde has been able to wrap up the major events nicely, both globally and between Nigeria and her international partners. Later on in the program, just before the Christmas, the Nigeria Immigration Service released a memo informing Nigerians living in the diaspora they could travel back home with their expired passports. A number of people have taken advantage of this, but what implications are there for the nation? I'll be speaking to Foreign Affairs commentator Colin Sweke on this. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. Let's check in on those other discussions in diplomatic circles. We'll be right back.
President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, has promised to never betray his country after being re-elected for a second term with 73% of the votes cast in a fiercely contested election. Logistical setbacks, an election day overrun, and an opaque vote count have fueled a dispute that threatens to further destabilize a country roughly the size of Western Europe, which is the world's top producer of cobalt and other prized industrial commodities. Since Election Day, some of Tshisekedi's main challengers, including former oil executive Martin Fayulu, have been calling for a rerun of the contest and of legislative elections, accusing CENI, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission, of allowing the vote to be tipped in the president's favor. Earlier on Sunday, a group of 9 opposition presidential candidates and 6 leaders of political parties asked supporters to take to the streets to protest after the release of the provisional results.
Grâce au travail de chaque Congolaise et de chaque...
Yemen's Houthi militant movement says 10 of its naval personnel are dead and missing after 3 of their boats were attacked by US forces in the Red Sea. The Iran-aligned group, which has been attacking shipping in the Red Sea for weeks in what it calls a response to Israel's war in Gaza, attacked the Maersk cargo ship on Saturday and Sunday. US naval helicopters then sank 3 of the 4 small boats the Houthis had used in Sunday's attack and drove the 4th back to shore. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the border zone between the Gaza Strip and Egypt should be under Israel's control. Mr. Netanyahu was speaking at a press conference as Israel entered the 13th week of its war against Hamas. Israel has said it intends to destroy Hamas in Gaza and demilitarize and de-radicalize the territory in order to prevent any repeat of the October 7th cross-border killing and kidnapping spree by the Palestinian militant group that sparked the war. Mr. Netanyahu says the war is at its height and that Israel was fighting on all of the fronts and assured the war will continue for many more months.
Welcome back. 2023 was a year of ups and downs. Let's look back on some of the major highlights globally.
The year 2023 began with major headlines in Brazil, which saw former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva returned to power as president. The results didn't go down well with incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro's supporters, who turned violent after they announced the winner. They invaded and defaced the country's Congress, Presidential Palace, and Supreme Court in a grim echo of the U.S. Capitol invasion 2 years ago by fans of former President Donald Trump. Later in the month, Pakistan experienced one of the biggest suicide bombings as a suicide bomber blew himself up inside a crowded mosque. At least 100 people, including 27 police officials, were killed. Numerous disasters plagued the world in 2023, beginning with Turkey, who witnessed its most devastating natural disaster. A 7.8 magnitude quake hit southeastern Turkey and parts of Syria, leaving more than 50,000 people dead across the two countries. Floodings and landslides triggered by heavy rains killed at least 129 people in Rwanda. Floods also hit the Democratic Republic of Congo, where hundreds of people were killed in one of the country's deadliest disasters. Morocco was dealt a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in the high Atlas Mountains. Over 2,900 people dead in the country's deadliest earthquake since 1960. Days after, Storm Daniel and a collapsed dam swept floods through eastern Libya, destroying large parts of the eastern coastal city of Derna. The UN confirmed more than 4,000 people died. An unfortunate incident in Iraq, what was supposed to be a day of joy, turned to mourning after a fire ripped through a packed wedding hall, killing at least 100 attendees. The fire began when flares ignited a ceiling decoration as the bride and groom danced. Two military coups rocked the African continent this year in the West African region. Soldiers took over power from Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum in the capital Niamey as regional leaders, ECOWAS, locked horns with the new leadership, announcing it could employ the use of force in removing the junta. On the second to the last day of August, military officers in Gabon seized power, putting President Ali Bongo under house arrest, minutes after the Central African States election body announced he had won a third term in office. The month of April saw violence return to the Sudanese capital Khartoum as the country's armed forces and a paramilitary group clashed in a struggle for power. The fighting has now raged on for over 7 months. Ukraine marked its first anniversary of the Russian invasion into its country. A couple of months later, Finland was given the nod to join NATO, completing a historic security policy shift triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, just before Finland's membership to NATO, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Few days later, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Mr. Putin in Moscow, seeking both to deepen economic ties and also promote Beijing's role as a potential peacemaker in Ukraine. Perhaps the first serious challenge to President Vladimir Putin's grip on power of his 23-year rule in Russia, mutinous Russian mercenary fighters Wagner barreled towards Moscow in June. Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said his men were on a march for justice to remove corrupt and incompetent commanders he blamed for botching the war in Ukraine. 2 months later, however, Prigozhin was killed in a plane crash, raising suspicions of a possible Kremlin-orchestrated hit, but Russia vehemently denied. In October, Palestinian group Hamas launched a surprise attack on southern Israel on the 7th. Israel said Hamas killed 1,200 people, mainly civilians, and took over 240 hostages. This triggered a retaliation from Israel with a barrage of attacks on Gaza till date in the most intense bombardment of the Strip in the 75-year history of its conflicts with the Palestinians. Former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi also died in 2023. The prominent billionaire businessman created the country's largest media company before transforming the political landscape. Still in June, a submersible taking wealthy tourists to visit the site of the Titanic wreckage went missing. After an intense 5-day international rescue effort, all 5 people aboard were pronounced dead after the vessel suffered a catastrophic implosion. Despite the tragic incidents of the year, there were still some feel-good stories. Colombia was able to rescue 4 children who had gone missing in the country's dense jungle for more than 40 days after a deadly plane crash. The siblings, aged 13, 9, 5, and 1, were found on the border between the Colombian provinces of Caqueta and Guarive. Indian lunar lander Chandrayaan-3 successfully touched down on the lunar surface, making India the 4th nation to successfully land on the moon and the 1st to land in the South Pole region. And in the UK and the Commonwealth, Britain welcomed its new king, the first in 70 years. King Charles III was crowned in the country's biggest ceremonial event. He succeeded his mother, Queen Elizabeth, when she died in September 2022. At 74, he became the oldest British monarch to have the 360-year-old St. Edward's crown placed on his head as he sat upon a 14th century throne at London's Westminster Abbey.
Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, had a busy year attending summits, conferences, and convincing international partners to invest in Nigeria. From the meeting with UAE authorities in Dubai, where visa agreements were announced, to the Saudi-Nigeria business meeting in Riyadh. A hopeful President Tinubu assures there will be more to look forward to in the coming year.
Nigeria has been known as the giant of Africa. But what awaits the giant in 2024? Maybe a look back into 2023 could help in predicting its future, especially under a new administration, Bola Ahmed Tinubu's. The new president had the Niger coup fallout to deal with as the first international issue, setting the tone of being a hardline decisive leader when he announced ECOWAS would employ the use of force in returning the civilian rule of President Mohamed Bazoum. He was backed by the regional body, and during the weeks that followed, he would explain Nigeria had no intention of invading neighboring Niger, but that ECOWAS would prepare for a possible military intervention. The president went on to be Nigeria's #1 salesman when he began proposing Nigeria's readiness to welcome more international investors. He sought to reassure authorities of renewal of ties by resuming visa issuance from Dubai, the UAE. Nigerians make up the largest group of travelers to the UAE, and the government restoring visa issuance for Nigerians would balance economic and diplomatic relations between the two countries. President Tinubu returned from the meeting in Dubai, celebrating that an agreement had been reached, but the Dubai government only confirmed it was working through the fine print of the deal. President Tinubu continued his mission at the G20 meeting held in India. On the sidelines, he held meetings with US President Joe Biden, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and World Bank President Ajay Banga, among others. Again, reiterating Nigeria was open to international investors. The same message was preached in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, during the first Saudi-Africa summit. There, he underscored Nigeria's commitment to attracting more foreign direct investment and expanding business partnerships, which are strongly reinforced by his administration's ongoing domestic economic reforms. He promised the bottlenecks had been removed and there would be huge return on investments.
The change is right here. Perception of Nigeria has been that of layback, corruption, and giant of Africa with elephantiasis. But that is gone.
Convinced, the Saudi government established the Saudi-Nigerian Business Council and assured the first meeting will hold in Nigeria. Not long after, President Tinubu joined other African heads of state and governments of the G20 Compact with Africa in Berlin, Germany. Speaking at the 10th German-Nigerian Business Forum, the president assured German businesses that with Nigeria's stable political landscape, foreign investments into the country are secure. The president's shuttle diplomacy for the year ended with his attendance of the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai, where he witnessed the signing of an accelerated performance agreement between Nigeria and Germany to improve Nigeria's electricity supply.
The measures that we're taking here, that we've signed off on reduction of methane.
He also hosted a high-level meeting with stakeholders and investors on the Nigeria carbon market and the electric buses rollout program. The president also held bilateral talks with King Charles of England, the president of UAE, and leaders of several countries and multilateral partners to concretize engagements. Nigerians critical of the nation hopping are eager to see fruits of the president's trip, hoping that better positioning will translate into stronger foreign policy expressions.
The Nigeria Immigration Service released a statement on December 22nd informing Nigerians that the federal government has approved that all Nigerians returning home can be admitted into the country with their expired Nigerian passports. That statement also says airlines have to be informed to allow holders of expired Nigerian passports to board without let. A number of Nigerians have taken advantage of the directive even before the announcement because it's not the first time. In December last year, the federal government approved the boarding and entrance of Nigerians abroad with an expired international passport into the country. Even before that, the move has received positive reviews as Nigerians have been able to come and go as they like without harassment from authorities. Foreign affairs commentator Collins Wike says while this is a good idea, it doesn't solve the difficulty of passport renewal. He joins me now from Brussels. Collins, great to see you.
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me.
Do you think Nigerians should take advantage of the directive on expired passports? I mean, they have already.
There is absolutely no doubt about the fact that this is, an important window that Nigerians in diaspora should take. But they should take it responsibly. What I mean by that is that they should see this as something that is not permanent, so which means that it is an exception, and the purpose is actually to alleviate some of the problems that they are going through in terms of, securing their passports abroad and using it to travel. Now, that remains the norm. The norm in terms of taking time out to process your passport applications, obtain your passport, and then use it to travel. But where you are faced with an emergency situation, or where there is scarcity of, passport booklets, as it is sometimes the case, and I hope with the reforms that are taking place that will become a thing of the past. But if for the unlikely reason that it persists, then traveling home with your, expired passport becomes, inevitable, and good a thing that the government has now communicated very clearly about it, so people could, begin to take, that advantage. So yes, it is absolutely necessary that people take advantage of it, but in a responsible manner.
This will not be the first time that the government will be putting the message out there. What do you think is the aim of such a directive?
Government, in trying to turn a new page, they have acknowledged the mess that had gone on for way too long, and they have tried to clean up the system. And so this window of allowing Nigerians in diaspora to travel with their expired passport is one of the ways of actually acknowledging the failings of the past, creating opportunity for the backlogs to be, eliminated. I mean, in terms of waiting times and all of that, one can only hope or expect, as a matter of fact, that there will be availability this time around, because scarcity of booklet was always an issue. So now that they have done that, I believe that those who now are able to travel with their expired passport, once they get back into Nigeria, they should be able to process, their new passports. I understand from Philas, as a matter of fact, even a family member had actually confirmed that when they say that there is express procedure where you can get your passport within 24 hours, yes, it has become real. Now, I can confirm this because a family member actually, benefited from that. I hope this will be sustained so that when people now travel with their expired passport, they can then process a substantive passport, and then the problem is sorted out once and for all. But more importantly, sufficiency is important, that there is sufficient passport booklet, and then the problem is sorted out in a sustainable manner.
What about the diplomatic implications that this could have on the immigration service?
Well, Amarachi, on the diplomatic front, I can think of two major areas of concern, for want of a better word. Number one is the issue of deportation. You are probably aware that there are a number of foreign governments, particularly, considering the spate of the rise of far-right parties in Europe or in the Western Hemisphere overall, where anti-immigration forces, even from the opposition, are seizing power in terms of actually pressuring governments in power to strengthen, to harden their immigration policy. So what that means essentially is that more and more people are being deported. The issue that they face in that regards is that governments are in a hurry out here to actually deport people, whether judiciously or unjudiciously. The role that embassies of Nigeria have played, in the past is ensuring that Nigerians who still had reasons to remain in those countries rather than being deported, that they do not issue the travel certificate with which they are deported. Take, for instance, there are cases where people still have appeals awaiting adjudication in courts for a deportation order. The government then finds one way or the other to actually sneak them into the aircraft, and then off they go, back deported, when they should be right in that country to, hear the verdict, whether they should be deported or not. There have been cases where, in their absence, the cases were ruled in their favor. So what I have seen, a number of Nigerian diplomats do. I mean, I can talk authoritatively of, Belgium here, where I am. Ambassador Usman Baraya, can be regarded as a pacesetter in ensuring that such people, are given fair trial, and while they are being tried, that they remain in the country. Now, with this new directive, I think it becomes easier for such rogue governments, for want of a better word to describe them, to bundle these people into the aircraft with their expired passports, and then in Nigeria, they find themselves. The other aspect is Nigerians who have committed crimes abroad. There is always this haste to deport them back to Nigeria, even before their term is concluded or at the end of their jail term, which some from in the political left have seen as double punishment for one offense. Now, Nigerian government, represented by the good diplomats, have always held that that should not be so. With the issue of expired passports, the Nigerian government might not even know when, Nigerian government represented by the embassy might not even know when these people are bundled into the aircraft and deported back to Nigeria after serving their jail term. So these are two major areas that could constitute, major diplomatic challenges, if not, looked into properly. I believe, that it should be given strong consideration and, some caveats created for these two major groups.
Thanks again, Collins, and do have a great year ahead. This is where we end the program this week. Let's make it a great 2024. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Bye for now.